proceeding today?
We are present and ready. We have been circulating options for a amicable resolution. I believe that some of the parties are in agreement with that, but I don't know that we have an agreement from both parents. So we are just ready to proceed, Judge.
All right. Are there issues that the parties are in agreement on? And if so, what would those be?
There are no issues that I'm aware of from the father's attorney that are agreeable.
At this point, Judge, I have received emails from other party members with their proposals that I have not had a chance to discuss with Mr. Armendariz. So if I could speak with him briefly, we might be able to get it resolved.
All right. I'm going to assume that everybody is okay with the department being out of the case. That may be the one constant that everybody is in agreement with. What I understand the court is here today to decide is primary possession, child support, and then possession and access issues. I will allow Mr. Haney to have a few minutes with Mr. Armendariz in a breakout room. I know it's difficult to be able to talk to your client from TDC, so we'll be in recess while Mr. Haney has a consult with his client. Number CV2106191 in the interest of Armendariz. Mr. Haney, have you had an opportunity to talk with your client?
I have, Your Honor.
And are there any matters on which the parties can agree?
Yes, Your Honor, there are several. In fact, perhaps only one issue. First of all, Mr. Armendariz is in agreement with paying minimum wage child support 60 days after his release, cash medical for each child at $25, that the mother be named managing conservator and the father possessory conservator. The only disagreement has to do with access to the children once he's released from custody.
All right. And my understanding is that he's currently having weekly phone calls with the boys.
I think there are 2 phone calls. 2 phone calls a month is what my information is, but I don't know that that's correct.
All right. So we'll proceed then on the issues of possession and access of the children, both while he continues to be incarcerated and then the party's request once he's released. I've sworn in my witnesses. Ms. Broughton, as the petitioner, you have the ability to call witnesses. Do you have any witnesses?
I think I'd like to call the father briefly, Your Honor, first.
All right. Mr. Armendariz, can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am.
You are already sworn in, so Ms. Broughton's going to ask you some questions, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Mr. Armendariz, I am the county attorney. I don't know if you can see anybody on your screen, but I represent CPS in this case. So I just want to make you aware of that, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
My question for you is, can you let us know the status of your sentencing and how long you were planning to be incarcerated?
I'm actually up for parole next month. They are behind, and my 1 year set off is February 18th, so I should be seeing them around February 20th. I should know something within 3 weeks. After that, after I see them, I should have an answer. I have 2 40-year sentences, one for manufacture of a controlled substance with intent to delivery and engage in criminal activity in a methamphetamine ring. They are run CC. My long way discharge, I believe, is 2055. My short way is in 2030. I'm eligible for parole every year as long as I stay out of trouble.
And when did you begin these 2 40-year sentences?
I started in 2013 of October 4th. And I was I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You started this process in 2013, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. And I was sentenced to TDCJ August 6, 2014 to Middleton TDCJ in Abilene, Texas.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Judge. Thank you.
Mr. Howard, any questions of the witness?
Just a few follow-up questions. Mr. Armendariz, it's correct
sir.
that you've been incarcerated since 2014. Is that correct?
Yes, in the TDCJ.
Okay, and that's on two 40-year sentences. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Run CC.
One is an engaging in organized criminal activity. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
The other one was possession of controlled substance with intent to deliver.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so I don't want to get into the details, but both those cases regard distributing drugs. Is that true?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And the offenses on those two cases were not the same date, were they? The engaging was 8/1/2012, wasn't it?
Well, see, that's what I don't understand, because I wasn't selling drugs in 2012, and I've asked that repeatedly, and I can't get a straight answer.
Okay. Were you arrested in 2012 for the engaging in organized criminal activity case?
No, sir. I was arrested October 4th, 2013 for manufacture of a controlled substance with intent to deliver. And then on March 4th of 2014, I got a sealed indictment for organized criminal activity.
Okay. And you've been incarcerated ever since, I guess, October of 2013.
In and out, and I was last sentenced March or sometime in February, and I've been in here ever since.
So, Mr. Armendariz, have you ever made parole on these charges?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay. But it's true that you were eligible back in 2018.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Despite being eligible now for 4 to 5 years, you have not made it out on parole.
No, sir.
And when you say that you see parole in a few weeks, you're just talking about the next time you come up for parole. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I'll actually speak to the parole officer sometime in February, sometime after the 18th. Like I said, they're behind. And it's up to the parole board if they decide I've done enough time and enough things to better myself to get out of here.
Right. But there's been no decision made on your parole. You have not gained parole and you're waiting to complete a class or something like that, are you?
No, I'm not waiting to complete no classes unless they put me in one, sir.
Okay. Now, I know there was an announcement made earlier, so I want to clarify exactly what you're in agreement with. You're in agreement with the children remaining with their mom, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you're in agreement with her having sole managing conservatorship of your two children? Is that right? And you would be named as a possessory conservator, which would mean you'd have some rights, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're okay paying some child support and some health insurance offset money. Is that correct?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay. And so it sounds like the issue is what type of possession access you have with the kids.
Yes.
Mr. Armendariz, is that what the concern is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Armendariz, you understand that you've been getting 2 phone calls at least a month and the mom's in agreement with that continuing.
Okay.
So is that, do you want more than that, less than that?
I mean, I would prefer to have more. That'd be great. You know, be able to have more contact with my kids and more than just twice a month. That'd be great.
Okay. Mr. Armendariz, do you understand that the phone calls are only at twice a month as after the request of the department, based on some of the issues those phone calls were earlier causing? Do you know that's why they're at twice a month at this point?
No, and the reason why is I say no because I never received anything from Ms. Armendariz saying she did not want me to call any other time by 7 o'clock. I never spoke with her on the phone, and I never received a letter.
Okay. And Mr. Armendariz, what sort of possession access are you asking this court for?
All I want is because in 2015 we had some things happen, me and her, and I want to be able to see my kids when I want, and just not at her dispute And I mean, it is my fault that I put myself in prison. I take full responsibility for that. But I don't want her to be able to take the kids away from me again.
Okay.
Because
Do you understand, Mr. Armendariz, that the mom is in agreement with guaranteeing you some supervised visitation a month?
I understand that.
Okay. And currently, your dad lives with the mom and the kids, doesn't he?
From what I've been told by my oldest boy, yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have a good relationship with your father?
I did about 10 years ago.
Okay. You understand that the mom is proposing your dad as an approved supervisor?
Okay.
Okay. And so, Mr. Armendariz, you've been incarcerated since these kids were
5 and 2, 5 and 3.
5 and 2, continuously.
Yes.
Have you ever seen them in person since that date?
Yes. The last time I seen them was March 15 of 2015.
Okay. And who brought them to see you? The mom?
My wife and my dad.
Okay. And so you saw them 7, 8 years ago was the last time you saw your two kids.
Yes.
Okay. And you understand that your kids have some concern because, quite frankly, they don't have much of a relationship with you. You understand that?
That's understandable.
Okay. But you believe it will be safe and appropriate and best interest of your kids for you just to be allowed to see these kids whenever you want, whenever you get out from a 40-year sentence.
As long as there's no, as long as there's not no disrespectful or derogatory or a negative environment. And I'm not saying just pick them up and you just take off with them. But if I get off from work and I just want to stop by and say, hey, y'all want an ice cream, or hey, y'all want a soda? Cause I'm trying to get a bond back with my boys because I've been away from them so long. And, for 15 minutes, I ask questions, and that's all I do is ask questions. Hey, how was school? What subjects going on? Hey, what new games are you playing? What are you learning new? I try to be positive because I was in a negative place in my life. And I do is just try to bring them up and tell them to move forward. I just found out my son wants to go to college.
Okay.
My son's
Mr.
gonna be a
Armendariz, let me ask you this. Do you understand, Mr. Armendariz, that the mom, Kathy Armendariz, she wants you to stay in the kid's life? Do you understand that?
I didn't know nothing about that, no.
Okay.
I mean,
Do you understand that she wants her kids, despite whatever's happened in the past, to have some sort of relationship with their father?
That's what I want too.
Okay. Knowing that, does that change your opinion on trusting her to determine your visitation?
I don't know.
Okay.
Because
I don't have any other questions.
actions speak louder than words.
I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Haney, questions for your client?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Armendariz, when we talked earlier, there were some things that you wanted to have an opportunity to let the judge know in terms of what your possession and access should be. So let's talk about that first. During the time that you've been incarcerated, what things have you done to try to become a better person and prepare yourself to be a better father?
I have received a GED, received it in 2015. I transferred into automotive for associate's degree in applied science and automotive technology. I finished half of that, got transferred to another unit, and I was allowed to take business management classes, and I got my associates in applied science in business. I've taken anger management, NA, AA, parenting classes, nutrition classes, authentic manhood, anything I can do to better myself as a father, a husband, a friend, a leader. I'm far from perfect, but I try because all I have to do is sit in here and think about the things that I've done that could have been a whole lot better. things I could have done different, but I didn't. But this is how it allowed me, and I am not going to lie to y'all. I'll be frank. I needed this, and I'll be blunt. I needed this because I needed to sit down and get the reality of life because I was a very selfish person.
All right, Mr. Armendariz, we're talking here about now what kind of access you have. First of all, while you're in prison, I think that you have agreed that the 2 or more phone calls a month is appropriate. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Then once you were released, let's talk about what type of visitation you would like. For example, would you be willing to have the supervised visitation that the other parties have proposed for a certain period of time? And then if that goes well, to have more frequent visitation.
Yes, sir.
Then once the supervised visitation goes well, if it does, then what kind of visitation are you asking the judge to give you with your children once it's been determined that you can be with them without supervision?
Just slowly let them to come to the house, take them out, to dinner, and to maybe eventually get where they can feel comfortable enough to stay the night with me so we can just start over.
So would you be comfortable with something that allowed you, say, one Saturday a month from some, basically all day, again, for a period of time? And if that goes well, perhaps to have overnight visitation?
That'd be great.
So now there were several things I know you wanted to tell the judge. Is there anything else that you want to tell her?
Just give me a chance. Let me show you I can do right and be a good father to these kids.
Thank you, sir. I pass the witness.
Mr. Lappy, any questions for this witness?
We had proposed originally that we just say visitation is agreed by the parties, but you didn't want that because you didn't think the wife would agree. Was that right? I mean, the ex-wife.
Yes.
Okay. But now you want to drop by anytime you want to. So you're basically asking for the same thing, aren't you? That as long as it's agreed between you.
Yes.
Do you have any problem with the order saying that if the boys for some reason don't want to visit, that they can say they don't want to visit?
If my kids do not want to visit me, I do not have a problem with that. It was going to be at Miss Armendariz's discretion, which I'm understanding if they have plans or something going on, but I just don't want her just to have full power where it's just no, where she can just take them away for no reason.
Right. And what I had suggested to the attorneys that we have an order that says that after you get out 45 days later or 30 days later or something, you get a 2-hour supervised visit once a month where your dad's the supervisor. And then if the court wants to, after several months, increase that sum, that way it's spelled out a specific date, and you have a specific already set out by the court order date when you can have visitation. That way the mother of children doesn't have a legal right to oppose that. Would you be agreeable with that? And then later work up to more visits if those are all going well.
Yes, sir, I would.
Okay, and did you know that the counselor said that she didn't want the children to have more than 2 phone calls per month at the time right now?
That's what I got in the paperwork, yes.
Okay, so for a while you were having some once a week or some more phone calls per month?
When I first got contact with them, Now, there are some times that I try to speak with Miss Armendariz to try to figure out a time to call, but she never would answer me. So I was calling periodically at different times. Then eventually I was just calling I was already calling at 7 o'clock because when I first came in to have contact with them, I didn't know what their school schedule was. I didn't know what their sports schedule was. I didn't know what their work shift was. I didn't know nothing.
Okay,
But you
so
can go
it
back
was,
and look at the calls where I just called before the court said 7 o'clock. I was already calling at 7, 6:30, somewhere in there.
okay, so it was a recommendation by the counselor to limit the phone calls to twice a month.
And that's fine.
We passed the witness, Your Honor.
Understanding correctly that your testimony today is that you could be released on parole as recently as this year or possibly 40 years from now. Is that right? Somewhere in that ballpark?
Yes, ma'am. If, in which I hope I do, I make parole this year, I'll probably get a program, which will be a FI6 or FI6R. If it's a 6R, I have to wait 3 months before I can start my program, which will put me in May. And I'll
Okay,
start-
you've answered my question, but it's a pretty large range of time is what we're talking about. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. It could be up to a year and a half from now.
And it could be much, much longer, correct?
And yes, ma'am.
And how old are your children?
Children are 13 and 12.
And so it's very difficult to say with any certainty today what kind of schedule would work. These children could be 15, 18, 25, 35 years old before you're ever out. Is that fair to say?
That's a possibility. Yes, ma'am.
And would it then make a lot of sense why we might be talking about a visitation schedule that is by agreement of the parents or by agreement of the children based on their needs and their ages at that time? Does that make sense to you why we might be requesting that?
Yes, ma'am.
As opposed to a set schedule for overnight visits with children that may be well over 18. That doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
No, ma'am.
Are you aware that due to the length of your sentence and the nature of this case, there was certainly potential that we could request that your parental rights to these children be terminated? Were you aware of that?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you aware that the reason that is not being requested today is because of the request of the mother, Ms. Armendariz, who has emphasized that she does not want that to happen to you? Were you aware of that?
No, I was not.
That's the witness, Judge.
Mr. Howard, anything further? You're on mute, sir.
Not of this witness, thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Haney, anything further?
Not with this witness,
The
thank you.
mother has done everything on her service plan
Yes,
and the children are doing well in that home.
yes,
And what we are asking today is that the department be dismissed as the managing conservator of these children, that the mom be named as the sole managing conservator. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And we are asking that the court appoint the father as a possessory conservator as opposed to termination of his parental rights. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, as far as visitation between the children and the father, it's almost impossible to make any kind of a recommendation because we have no idea when he'll be getting released or even if he would be released before these children turn 18. Is that correct?
Yes,
And in your report, you had stated that visitation between the father and the children would be at the mother's discretion because she's going to be the one around at that time to know what's best at that time. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And is that still your request today?
Yes,
And we are in agreement, of course, for the father to pay minimum wage, child support, and cash medical support 60 days after his release if the children are still minors. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And do you believe, based on what you've seen from Ms. Kathy Armendariz throughout this case, that she would be the right person to make the decision for what kind of visitation is best between the children and the father in the future?
Yes,
Has she been, from your perspective, has she been pretty cooperative in wanting to facilitate that relationship?
yes, she has.
Maybe even surprisingly so?
Yes,
And so your request then would be that visitation is basically whatever the mother is requesting today. If she wants a set schedule today that she can count on, we would think that would be appropriate. If she's comfortable saying that she'll do that by agreement based on the needs of the children at that time, you're comfortable with that arrangement as well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And there's nothing else that she needs to do and no other services that we feel we can provide her at this point.
Not at this time.
These children are in good hands with her and we're ready to dismiss.
Yes.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Mr. Howard, questions of this witness?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Elliott Craig, I just want to briefly talk about some good things. How long have you been the caseworker on this case?
I was given this case in November of 2022.
Okay. And you were well aware when you were given this case of the history of the case.
Yes.
Okay. And let's talk about that briefly. At the beginning of this case, the mom was in a very bad place, wasn't she?
Yes, she was.
There was mental health issues. There were potential substance abuse issues. She didn't have a place to live. Is that all true?
That's correct.
She didn't have a job. She was getting services from the ARC. That's all true, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so here we are. And isn't it also true that this mom now has a good job?
Yes, she does.
The substance abuse issues have been tested and tested.
That's correct.
She's got on her feet and she's been able to get herself an appropriate house for herself and her kids.
Yes, she has.
She's gone to all the counseling and all the therapy that the department could ask for.
Yes, she has.
And then on this monitored return, this is a monitored return that's gone pretty much the full 6 months, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so this is a case where it seems the services have worked exceedingly well.
Yes.
And the mom knows also from these same services where help is in the future should, anything come up. Is that true?
That's correct.
And so this is a case where I would presume that the department and you are really proud of all the hard work this mom's done.
We're very proud of Mrs. Armendariz.
Okay. And you're also proud that the results of all these services are paying off.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Haney, any questions of this witness?
No question.
Mr. Lappy?
No questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Broughton, your next witness?
I have no further witnesses, Judge.
Mr. Haney, Mr. Howard, any witnesses?
I'll call Kathy Armendariz, hopefully briefly. Ms. Armendariz, can you unmute? Thank you. You are Kathy Armendariz,
Yes, sir.
and you are the mom of these two children.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You just heard me list off a number of things that you've accomplished in this case. Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
Is it true that when this case started, you were really down on your luck? I guess that's a nice way of saying it.
Yes, sir.
And isn't it also true that even about 6 months into this case that you were still battling a lot of difficult issues?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But it's thankfully also true that you picked yourself up, you availed yourself of services, and today you've really accomplished a whole lot.
Yes, sir.
Where do you work?
Botskis.
Okay. And are you a manager there now?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
That was at Dollar Tree before I switched jobs.
Okay. And are you, do you have a house that's appropriate for yourself and your kids?
Yes, sir.
In fact, Mr. Armendariz's father lives with you, does he not?
Yes, sir, he does.
Okay. Are you married to Mr. Armendariz?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any intention that you have that you and Mr. Armendariz are going to live together as husband and wife in the future?
I don't know.
Right.
I don't.
Okay. You have expressed to me that it's really important for your kids to have a father figure in their life.
Yes,
And why is that so important to you?
because I didn't have one
Okay.
until I
and-
was 15.
And that lack of a relationship in your life, has that been something that's really made this maybe a more emotional decision? You want your kids to have an appropriate dad in their life.
Yes, they need to get to know their dad.
Okay. And in fairness, have the phone calls between the dad and the kids been appropriate?
Yes,
Okay. But in this process, there were rules and some steps that you had to take before you were able to see your kids more and it was safe. Isn't that true?
yes, sir.
And you did all that
Yes,
and you proved yourself.
yes, sir.
Okay. And you're asking this court, because the lengthy service that lengthy sentence, excuse me, that Mr. Armendariz is serving, and not knowing, quite frankly, when he's going to get out and what he's going to do to get out, you're asking the court to basically put the visitation in your discretion.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that would include your ability to supervise or find a supervisor.
Yes, sir.
And you believe that's in the best interest of your children?
Yes,
And do you believe that's necessary for the safety of your children?
yes, sir.
Okay. But is it also your intention to let Mr. John Armendariz be a father to these kids if he's appropriate and doing well?
Yes, sir.
If he gets out and supervised visits go well for a while and he seems to be doing things on the right track, your hope is that he could get a lot more time with kids.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's what you want.
It is.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Haney, any questions for this witness?
No questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Lappy, any questions for this witness?
Oh, Your Honor.
Ms. Broughton, any questions for this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Howard, any further questions for this witness or witnesses?
I have neither. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Haney, any witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Lappy, any witnesses?
Your Honor.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
No, Your Honor.
Do all parties rest and close at this time then, Ms. Broughton,
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Howard,
We do. Thank you.
Mr. Haney,
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Lappy?
Yes, Your Honor.
With all of the evidence in, can I hear from CASA, please?
Yes, this is Patrick Schaefer with CASA, Your Honor. We're in agreement with the recommendations all the way across.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Armendariz,
Yes, ma'am.
is there a specific day and time that you're having the phone calls now?
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, on Tuesdays, the second and fourth Tuesday of the month.
Is there a particular time that's better for the children?
The 6:37 works good for them.
All right. I want to let the parties know that I did meet at the request of the children. I did meet with them yesterday, both boys and their dog Scooby. They are very respectful young men, and they were appropriate for their age, their interest as far as football and computers. They had very high remarks about their mother, and I do as well. The hard work that she put in, she kind of handicapped herself in the beginning. She started behind and she stayed behind for a little bit, but she really picked it up towards the end there, and she has worked very hard to turn her life around, and she should be very, very proud of herself for what she has accomplished, because the court is certainly very proud of her for what she's accomplished. I do think that she is a different person from when Mr. Armendariz went into prison. I do think she's even a different person from the difficulties they had at the beginning of this case, trying to figure out the phone calls even. That being said, I also think that it's appropriate to have some rules in place if they cannot agree. The boys do enjoy their phone calls with their dad. They get a lot of connection and relationship out of that. And I don't want to sever that, because I think it is important for them to be able to ask the kind of questions they want to ask. So I hope that those phone calls continue as long as Mr. Armendariz is able to do them. I will name Ms. Armendariz as the managing conservator with the right to designate the primary residence. I will name the father, John Armendariz, as a possessory conservator with possessory conservator rights, with the exception of while he's incarcerated, having any decision-making capability for medical decisions. That just makes sense. If he's incarcerated, she's not able to get to him to share information about those kinds of needs prior to needing to take care of them. I will find that Mr. Armendariz will owe child support for each child based on minimum wage to begin 60 days after his release. That will be due on the first of the month thereafter through the Attorney General's office. That Mr. Armendariz will pay medical support of $25 per child upon release at the same time, 60 days after his release. In addition, he'll be responsible for 50% of the uninsured medical costs, as will Ms. Armendariz. So they'll split anything that insurance or Medicaid doesn't cover. I believe those were the things that had been agreed upon. As far as possession and access, I will say that possession and access can begin with anything that they mutually agree upon. If they do not mutually agree upon them, then the following are my orders with regard to possession and access. There'll be a phased plan. As long as dad is incarcerated, he shall have weekly supervised phone calls with the children on Tuesdays between 6:30 and to start between 6:30 and 7, and to end when the children are done with the phone call. So that's usually, I don't see them having the attention span of more than an hour. So I'll say an hour, but I don't see it being much more than that. Phase 2, upon his release, Mr. Armendariz, now this is absent mutual agreement. You can agree otherwise, but upon his release, if you don't agree, he will have first, third, and fifth Saturdays supervised from 10 to 6 for 6 consecutive months. And that's to be supervised by the managing conservator, Ms. Armendariz, or her designee. If that is accomplished for 6 consecutive months, phase 3 will kick in. They'll have first, third, and fifth weekends from Saturday at 10 to Sunday at 6. So that's an overnight for 6 consecutive months. Those are unsupervised weekends. If he successfully accomplishes those without any events, which I'm about to talk about, then on phase 4, he'll have a standard possession order. The general rules: Mr. Armendariz must confirm his visits once he's released via written or telephone communication. So that's email, text, or telephone 24 hours in advance. If he doesn't confirm, the visit doesn't happen. Mr. Armendariz must provide all of the transportation to and from the visitation for him and the children. Mr. Armendariz must have a valid driver's license to drive the children. The following are reversion events, meaning if one of these happens, Mr. Armendariz will go back to phase 1 supervised phone calls. The managing conservator can request a urinalysis drug test within 48 hours of a visit. If that drug test is positive, the visits revert to phase 1 for a period of 3 months. If he fails to take the drug test, they revert to phase 1. If the test must be at least 30 days apart. If the test comes back negative, then the person requesting the test must reimburse the cost of the test. That is to eliminate requesting a test every single time. So let's be sure that we need the test before we ask for it, because if it comes back negative, I'm ordering that you reimburse Mr. Armendariz for the cost of the test. If Mr. Armendariz reoffends or is jailed for a new offense, then the visitation will revert back to phase 1, supervised phone calls. If Mr. Armendariz misses 2 consecutive visits or 4 total visits in any phase, it reverts back to the phase 1 visitation phone calls. As long as Mr. Armendariz is progressing through the phases and there are no reversion events, he can attend public athletic and school activities of the children. And the children will have the right of first refusal expressed to their father. Meaning, if the children themselves are saying, I don't want to go on this visit this weekend, then they can, as long as that is expressed to their father, they can refuse to attend that visit. So at all times mutually agreed to. If y'all don't agree, it starts with phone calls. If he does well in the phone calls, that's for 3 months. Or if he reverts back, it's for 3 months. Or while he's incarcerated. Then phase 2, upon release, he'll have Saturdays during the day supervised by Ms. Armendariz or her designee, meaning if she designates Mr. Armendariz's father to be the supervisor, she can do that. That's for 6 months. If he does well for those 6 months, then he gets first, third, and fifth weekends unsupervised. If he does well for those weekends, it goes to a standard possession order. So it phases through to a standard possession order. The reversion or events are something that are pretty typical in cases. If you test positive for drugs, you start back with phone calls. If you reoffend, you start back with phone calls. If you don't attend the visits will stay at phone calls. It's pretty common sense and self-explanatory. The kids were very proud of the things that they were doing as far as athletics and at school. So I did want Mr. Armendariz, as long as he is sober and active in their lives, to be able to attend those. So that is something that I did add. I will at this time, once the department has drafted this final order, and I do have some notes written down if Ms. Shepherd needs the notes to get that visitation plan together. But once that is drafted, I will discharge the department as the temporary managing conservator. I will discharge Mr. Howard as the attorney ad litem for Ms. Armendariz for good cause. Mr. Haney is the attorney for Mr. Armendariz for good cause. I will discharge Mr. Lappy as the attorney for the children, and I will release CASA from their obligation as the guardian ad litem for the children. Are there any questions about what I've done today, Ms. Broughton?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Howard?
I have no questions.
Mr. Haney?
No question.
Mr. Lappy?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Armendariz, do you have any questions?
No, Your Honor.
You understand he works his way up to a standard possession order by doing well with the children.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and you're going to be the managing conservator and make all of the necessary decisions, medical, education, all of those things for the boys.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Armendariz, you understand that you're going to be paying child support for the boys?
Yes, ma'am.
And that while you're in there, you still get your supervised phone calls.
Yes, ma'am.
And then once you're released, you're going to start this plan that if you continue to do well, you can work your way up to a standard possession order where you would have the rights on the weekends to have the kids with you. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
And both of you understand that y'all can agree otherwise, but if you don't agree, this is what the plan is.
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you. All right, that would be the final order in the case. Any other questions or clarifications, Ms. Broughton?
No.
I'm seeing head shakes. No. Mr. Howard,
No.
Mr. Haney,
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Lappy.
No, Your Honor.
I want to say thank you very much, Ms. Armendariz. The boys were a joy to speak with yesterday. They were so cute with their new puppy, and I wish you luck with the puppy thing. It's all you now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right.